skies over the southern and central Philippines have turned a bruised, heavy gray for the past 48 hours. The rhythm of life in northern Mindanao and the Visayas has been dictated by the relentless drumming of rain. We are currently tracking the aftermath and the ongoing threat of Tropical Storm Basyang, known internationally as Penha. As of this Friday evening, February 6, 2026, the situation remains critical. What began as a tropical depression earlier this week rapidly intensified, making a forceful landfall in the town of Bayabas, Surigao del Sur, late Thursday night. Since then, the storm has carved a path of displacement and destruction that has left at least 4 people dead and forced more than 6,000 residents to flee their homes. From the coastal villages of Surigao to the urban centers of Cagayan de Oro and Iligan, the story is the same: water where streets should be, and residents waiting on rooftops for the sun to break through a ceiling of clouds that shows no sign of yielding. This is not just a weather event. For many Filipinos, it is a haunting repetition of a cycle they know all too well.
Kusog jud ang baha dere. Mahayahay dapit po. Iligan City mahayahay. Where are you, sis? I'm here at Mahayahay, Iligan City.
To understand the scale of this flooding, we have to look at the erratic behavior of Basyang. According to the State Weather Bureau, PAGASA, the storm didn't follow the script. Originally projected to cut directly through northern Mindanao, Basyang took a sudden northward veer after landfall, moving toward the Bohol Sea. While this shift spared some cities from the deadly eye of the storm, it inadvertently dumped concentrated, torrential rainfall over a wider area. Weather officials have noted that the sheer volume of water mirrors the catastrophic patterns of past storms like Sendom, even as Basyang was downgraded to a tropical depression this afternoon. The danger has not dissipated. The saturation of the soil in mountainous regions like Bukidnon and the uplands of Cebu has created a hair-trigger environment for landslides. In Surigao City, rescuers have been seen wading through chest-deep water, navigating current-heavy streets to reach trapped families. The wind, peaking at gusts of 70 kilometers per hour, has turned debris into hazards, but it is the water-silent, rising, and persistent that remains the primary antagonist in this unfolding crisis.
Para nasa ko ang kauban. Oh my God.
The numbers, though cold, tell a harrowing story of a Friday spent in transit. The Office of Civil Defense reports that the death toll currently stands at 4 victims of drowning and a localized landslide in the southern provinces. These are not just statistics. They represent the high stakes of every hour the rain continues to fall. As of the latest dispatch, over 5,800 individuals are currently being housed in evacuation centers, schools, gymnasiums, and parish halls across the Caraga and northern Mindanao regions have been converted into temporary shelters. In many of these centers, social distancing and hygiene remain a secondary concern to the immediate need for dry ground and a warm meal. In Iligan City, reports from the field describe a desperate night for many. Emergency responders were swamped with distress calls as floodwaters surged into residential areas during the early hours of Friday. Entire families were forced to the second floors of their homes, watching as the possessions they worked years to acquire were submerged in minutes. The psychological toll of these recurring floods is immense, as communities barely recovered from the 2025 typhoon season find themselves pushed back to point zero.
Atras ang tagamaya kay medyo delikado. La! Hala! 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 Hala ka, Ginoo ko!
The impact of Basyang extends far beyond the flood zones. It has effectively paralyzed the movement of people and goods across the central Philippines. The Philippine Coast Guard has been forced to ground nearly 100 seaports. This has left approximately 5,000 passengers and cargo workers stranded in various terminals. waiting for a clearance that may not come until the weekend. Inter-island ferries, the lifeblood of the Visayan economy, are docked as the sea remains too rough for safe passage. In the air, the story is similar. Multiple domestic flights to and from Cebu, Cagayan de Oro, and Surigao have been cancelled, leaving travelers in a state of limbo. On the ground, the infrastructure is buckling. In Antique and Negros Occidental, key roads have been rendered impassable by overflow from nearby rivers. Local disaster councils have issued urgent advisories to farmers, urging them to move livestock to higher ground. A reminder that in the rural Philippines, a flood doesn't just threaten lives, it threatens the very livelihoods that sustain the region for the months to follow.
Apaw na Stopwood Bridge. Tupong ng tubig.
Why is February traditionally one of the drier months seeing such violent weather? Meteorologists point to a combination of factors. We are currently under the influence of La Niña, a climate pattern that brings wetter than average conditions to the maritime continent. Furthermore, the Amihan, or the northeast monsoon, is in its peak season. When the cool winds of the Amihan collide with the warm, moist air of a tropical system like Basyang, the result is a shear line, a recipe for stationary, heavy rainfall. This meteorological synergy is what turned a relatively mid-sized tropical storm into a major flooding event. This latest disaster highlights a grim trend, according to the 2025 World Risk Report. The Philippines remains the most disaster-prone country in the world. The back-to-back hits from super typhoons last year have left the natural drainage systems and man-made infrastructure in a state of exhaustion. The new normal isn't just about stronger storms. It's about a climate that no longer gives the ground enough time to dry out between them. As the sun sets on this Friday, the red alerts remain active in Cebu City and across much of Mindanao, although Basyang is weakening as it moves toward the Sulu Sea. The risk of aftershocks in the form of landslides and flash floods remains high. Government agencies have shifted from rescue to relief mode, but for the thousands in evacuation centers, the true work begins when the water finally recedes. They will return to mud-caked homes and ruined harvests, facing the monumental task of rebuilding once again. For now, the Philippines remains a nation on watch, resilient in spirit but weary from the rain. This has been a special report on the February 2026 floods. Stay safe and keep to higher ground.